What do you mean I'm not in the will anymore? I stared at my father in disbelief, my voice echoing through their spacious living room in Chicago. Exactly what I said, Lana. My father's voice was cold, clinical. Your mother and I have decided that your portion of the inheritance will go to your brother instead. He's actually made something of himself. My mother nodded in agreement, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her coffee cup. Sweetheart, we've watched you struggle with that little app business of yours for years now. We just think the money would be better utilized by someone who's proven they know how to handle finances. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. At 29, I'd spent the last 4 years building my health tech startup from nothing, living on ramen and working 18-hour days. Yes, it had been a struggle, but I was finally on the verge of something incredible. You can't be serious, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I've put everything into this business. And what do you have to show for it? My father gestured around, as if my lack of a mansion somehow proved his point. Your brother has a corner office at Morgan Stanley. What do you have? A desk in a co-working space and dreams that are too big for your capabilities. The words stung because they weren't new. I'd heard variations of this speech my entire life. When I got a scholarship to Northwestern instead of Harvard. When I chose computer science over law. When I quit my corporate job to start my own company. This isn't about the money, I said, feeling tears threatening to spill. This is about you never believing in me. Oh, Lana. My mother sighed, exchanging a look with my father. We're just being realistic. Not everyone is meant to be successful. There's no shame in admitting defeat and getting a normal job. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. What they didn't know, what I'd been planning to tell them today before they ambushed me with this news, was that my failing business had just secured a meeting with the country's largest healthcare provider. If they signed on, everything would change. As I left their house, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from my lead investor, requesting an urgent call. My stomach twisted with anxiety. I had a feeling things were about to get worse before they got better. I sat in my car outside my parents' house, trying to process what had just happened. The inheritance itself wasn't life-changing, maybe $500,000 that my grandparents had left for each grandchild. But the message behind being cut out was crystal clear. I was the family disappointment. Growing up as the daughter of Harold and Patricia Reynolds meant living under constant pressure. My father had built his wealth through strategic investments in pharmaceutical companies, while my mother came from old money. Success wasn't just encouraged in our family. It was expected, demanded, and narrowly defined. My brother Jake had followed the prescribed path perfectly. Ivy League education, finance career, marriage to a socialite, 2 perfect children, and a summer home in the Hamptons by 35. I, on the other hand, had always been the question mark. Even when I graduated at the top of my class or landed prestigious internships, it was never quite enough. You could have done better, became the family motto for my achievements. 4 years ago, I'd spotted a critical gap in the healthcare technology market. Using my background in computer science and the experience I'd gained working for a major tech company, I developed an AI-driven platform that could predict patient readmission risks with unprecedented accuracy. I called it Prevent Care. My parents had scoffed when I left my 6-figure salary to pursue the startup. Another millennial thinking they'll be the next Steve Jobs, my father had said dismissively. When I asked for their investment, they declined, calling it throwing good money after bad decisions. Instead, I scraped together funding from angel investors who actually understood the technology. I worked day and night, building the platform, securing a small pilot program with a local hospital, and slowly gathering data that proved my system worked. 3 months ago, I'd started hearing rumors that my father was heavily investing in pharmatech, a publicly traded company developing a competing solution. My mother had casually mentioned it at dinner, watching me carefully as she added, "Your father thinks it's going to revolutionize the industry." I'd felt a pang of betrayal but dismissed it. Surely it was coincidence. The healthcare AI space was hot. Everyone was investing in it. My parents wouldn't deliberately back my competition while refusing to support me. Would they? But as I sat in my car, the pieces started falling into place. The timing of being cut from the will. Their increased criticism of my business. The smug looks. Maybe this wasn't just about disappointment. Maybe it was about something else entirely. The call with my lead investor, Dominic, was worse than I'd imagined. He sounded anxious, his usually calm voice now strained. Lana, Pharmatech just announced a major partnership with MedAlliance. They're implementing their readmission prevention system across all 53 hospitals in the network. My blood ran cold. MedAlliance was the healthcare provider I'd been courting for months, the same one I was supposed to meet with next week. The deal that would have made Prevent Care a legitimate contender in the healthcare technology space. That's impossible, I stammered. We've been in talks with them for months. Their technical team loved our solution. Apparently, Pharmatech swooped in with a massive discount and some high-level connections on the board, Dominic explained. The rumor is they were tipped off about your meeting and moved quickly to block it. High-level connections, like a major investor who happened to be my father. I need to go, I said, my mind racing. I spent the next hour parked outside my parents' house, searching for information about Pharmatech. The company had been struggling for months, their tech inferior to mine, but their marketing budget astronomical. Their stock had been plummeting until this morning's announcement, which sent it soaring by 43%. My phone rang again. It was my former classmate Jennifer, who worked as a junior executive at MedAlliance. Lana, I'm so sorry about what happened, she said. I thought you should know. The decision came down from our chairman after he played golf with some investor in Pharmatech. They rushed the deal through without the usual technical review. Did you catch the investor's name? I asked, already knowing the answer. Harold Reynolds. He apparently made a very compelling case against your technology, saying it wasn't scalable. My father. My own father had deliberately sabotaged my business. I sat in stunned silence as the reality sank in. This wasn't just parental disappointment or lack of support. This was active sabotage. He had used his connections to steal my opportunity and then had the audacity to cut me from the will for not being successful enough. When I finally drove away from my parents' house, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Everything I'd worked for was crumbling. Without the MedAlliance deal, my runway was limited. We had enough funding for maybe 3 more months before I'd have to let my team go. Part of me wanted to storm back into my parents' house and confront them. Another part wanted to curl up and admit defeat. Instead, I drove to my small office where my team of 5 dedicated developers was still working, unaware that our future had just been jeopardized. I couldn't give up now. Not when they had sacrificed so much to follow my vision. I needed a new plan, and fast. We need to pivot, I announced to my team the next morning. Their faces registered confusion as I explained what had happened with MedAlliance. So your dad basically torpedoed our biggest opportunity? Miguel, my lead developer, asked incredulously. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. But we're not giving up. Our technology is better than Pharmatech's. We just need to prove it. Over the next 3 weeks, we worked around the clock, refining our algorithm and reaching out to smaller hospital networks. We managed to secure a meeting with Westfield Healthcare, a regional group with 12 hospitals. It wasn't MedAlliance, but it could keep us afloat. The night before the Westfield presentation, I received a text from my brother Jake. Heard about MedAlliance, tough break. Maybe time to consider that job offer at Deloitte? Dad knows someone who could fast-track your application. I didn't respond. Jake had always been the diplomatic one, trying to mediate between my parents and me. But he'd also always chosen their side when it mattered. The Westfield presentation went flawlessly. Their technical team asked challenging questions, which we answered confidently. By the end, their chief medical officer was nodding enthusiastically. Your predictive accuracy is impressive, she said. We'll need to run this by the board, but I'm optimistic. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. Maybe we could recover from the MedAlliance setback after all. 3 days later, that hope was shattered when I received a formal email from Westfield. After careful consideration, We've decided to pursue alternative solutions for our readmission prevention needs. We appreciate your time and wish you success in your future endeavors." It made no sense. The technical team had been enthusiastic. What had changed? The answer came later that afternoon when Miguel burst into my office, his face pale. "You need to see this," he said, showing me his tablet. It was a press release from Pharmatech announcing a strategic partnership with Reynolds Investment Group, my father's company, to accelerate adoption of their healthcare AI solution across regional markets. The first-name partner? Westfield Healthcare. "He's systematically blocking us," I whispered, the full weight of the betrayal sinking in. When I called Westfield's CMO, she sounded genuinely regretful. "The board overruled us. One of our major investors insisted we go with Pharmatech." I didn't need to ask who that investor was. That evening, I received an unexpected call from my mother. "Lana, your father and I would like you to join us for dinner tomorrow. We have something important to discuss." My first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity won out. "Fine. 7 o'clock? Perfect. And Lana? Try to dress appropriately. The Hutchinsons might stop by." The Hutchinsons, my father's business associates. So this wasn't a personal dinner. It was another opportunity for them to showcase their successful son while highlighting my failures. I arrived at precisely 7, wearing my best business dress, not to impress them, but to armor myself against their judgment. To my surprise, my parents were warm and welcoming, acting as if our last encounter had never happened. "Darling, we've been thinking," my mother began over appetizers. "Perhaps we were hasty in our decision about the inheritance." My father nodded. "We might be willing to reconsider under certain conditions." I raised an eyebrow. "What conditions?" "Simple, really," my father said smoothly. "Shut down that little app business of yours and come work for me at Reynolds Investment. We could use someone with your technical background to evaluate potential healthcare investments." The offer was clear. Abandon my dream and embrace theirs, and I could have my place in the will back. It was a trap disguised as an olive branch. "I need some time to think about it," I said carefully, knowing I needed to play along while I figured out my next move. The following morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about my parents' sudden change of heart didn't add up. Why offer me a position now, when they'd been actively working to undermine my business? I decided to do some digging. Using my background in data analysis, I began researching Pharmatech's financial statements and major shareholders. What I discovered left me breathless. Reynolds Investment Group had acquired a 15% stake in Pharmatech 6 months ago, around the time my company had started gaining attention in healthcare circles. My father hadn't just invested in a competing company. He'd bet heavily on it, becoming one of its largest individual shareholders. But there was more. Pharmatech's technology was fundamentally flawed. Their early trial results had been cherry-picked to show success, but the full data set, which I accessed through a healthcare database, showed alarming inaccuracies in their predictive model. They were selling smoke and mirrors, and my father had to know it. This wasn't just business. This was personal. My father was willing to back an inferior product and risk patient outcomes just to prove me wrong. As I dug deeper, I discovered something else. Pharmatech was burning through cash at an alarming rate. Their quarterly report showed massive expenditures on marketing and executive compensation, while their R&D budget had been slashed. They were barely staying afloat, propped up by investor confidence and the recent partnerships my father had orchestrated. The revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. My parents' entire investment portfolio was now heavily weighted toward Pharmatech. Their financial future depended on its success, and by extension, on my failure. Just as I was processing this information, I received an email that changed everything. It was from Dr. Gabriela Rodriguez, the Director of Innovation at National Health Systems, the second-largest healthcare provider in the country. "Ms. Reynolds, your presentation at the Healthcare Innovation Summit last month caught my attention. I've been following your work and would like to discuss potential applications of your technology across our network." Could you meet next week? National Health Systems, with over 70 hospitals nationwide, would be an even bigger client than MedAlliance. This was the break we needed. I immediately called Miguel and the team to prepare for the meeting. We worked day and night, refining our presentation and enhancing our demo with the latest data. This time, I kept everything completely confidential. No one outside my immediate team knew about the opportunity. The meeting with Dr. Rodriguez and her technical team exceeded all expectations. They understood the superiority of our approach immediately. What sets your solution apart, Dr. Rodriguez said, is that it's built on solid statistical principles instead of marketing hype. We've evaluated pharmatech and found their claims exaggerated. By the end of the 4-hour meeting, we had a handshake agreement to move forward with a pilot program across 5 of their largest hospitals. As I drove home, elated but exhausted, my phone rang. It was my father. Lana, have you considered our offer? The position won't stay open forever. I'm still thinking about it, I said, fighting to keep my voice neutral. Actually, I'm meeting with some potential investors next week who might be interested in acquiring Prevent Care. If that happens, I'll definitely consider your offer. It was a lie, but I needed time. The National Health Systems deal wasn't final yet, and I couldn't risk my father discovering it and interfering again. Investors? Who would want to buy a failing startup? He scoffed. You'd be surprised, Dad. Sometimes the things you underestimate are the ones that end up changing everything. The pilot with National Health Systems began quietly. For 6 weeks, our system ran alongside existing protocols at 5 of their hospitals, analyzing patient data and predicting readmission risks with remarkable accuracy. The results were undeniable. Our algorithm outperformed not only their current system, but also Pharmatech's solution, which they'd been testing at 2 other facilities. Meanwhile, I played along with my parents' narrative, occasionally dropping hints that I was considering my options and meeting with potential buyers, feeding my father's belief that my company was on its last legs. One evening, I received an unexpected visitor at my office, Jennifer from MedAlliance. I shouldn't be here, she said nervously, but I had to show you this. She handed me an internal report showing that Pharmatech's system was failing spectacularly at MedAlliance. Readmission predictions were barely better than random chance, and the implementation costs had ballooned to 3 times the initial estimate. The board is furious, but they're trapped in a multi-year contract, Jennifer explained, and Harold Reynolds is pressuring them to keep quiet about the issues. I thanked Jennifer for the information, and after she left, I called Dr. Rodriguez. How quickly could we scale the pilot to all your hospitals if the results continue to be positive? With these numbers? We could begin full implementation within 60 days, she replied. In fact, I've already drafted the proposal for the board. Everything was falling into place, but I needed one more piece to secure our future. I reached out to Oliver Barnes, a prominent healthcare industry reporter who had covered my company in its early days. I have a story for you, I told him. It involves falsified data, conflicts of interest, and patient safety concerns. 2 days later, as I was finalizing the contract with National Health Systems, Miguel burst into my office with a panicked expression. We've got a problem, he said. Someone's trying to breach our servers. They're after our algorithm. I immediately knew who was behind it. With Pharmatech failing, my father must be desperate to get his hands on our superior technology. Lock everything down, I instructed, and prepare for Emergency Protocol Dawn. Protocol Dawn was our contingency plan for exactly this scenario, a complete backup of our system to secure servers, followed by a deliberate planting of false data to mislead any successful intruders. For the next 48 hours, we worked non-stop to secure our systems while simultaneously finalizing the National Health Systems contract. The timing was critical. If we could announce the partnership before Pharmatech realized what was happening, we'd have the upper hand. On the morning we were set to sign with National Health Systems, I received a call from my mother. Lana, your father and I are concerned. We've heard rumors that you're meeting with National Health today. Tell me that's not true. I hesitated. tempted to reveal everything, but it was too soon. Mom, I can't discuss my business dealings right now. Lana, listen to me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Your father has invested everything in pharmatech. Everything. If they lose the national health contract, we could lose everything. For a moment, I felt a twinge of doubt. These were my parents, after all. But then I remembered all the times they'd undermined me, dismissed my dreams, and actively worked to ensure my failure. I have to go, Mom. I have an important meeting to attend. As I hung up, I squared my shoulders and walked into the conference room where Dr. Rodriguez and her team were waiting, contract in hand. It was time to change everything. The National Health Systems deal was signed with minimal fanfare, just handshakes, signatures, and a small press release. But that press release was a precision-guided missile. National Health Systems selects Prevent Care for system-wide implementation after competitive analysis shows 89% greater accuracy than current market leader. We didn't name pharmatech explicitly, but everyone in the industry knew who the current market leader was. The impact was immediate. Healthcare technology forums exploded with discussion, and investors began asking pointed questions about pharmatech's claims. That same afternoon, Oliver Barnes published his exposé, Smoke and Mirrors: The Truth Behind Pharmatech's AI Claims. The article was devastating, detailing how Pharmatech had manipulated trial data, exaggerated results, and leveraged conflicts of interest to secure contracts. It specifically highlighted how Reynolds Investment Group had pressured healthcare providers to adopt the technology despite known flaws. By market close, Pharmatech's stock had plummeted 67%, and trading was temporarily halted due to volatility. The company issued a weak statement promising to address the concerns, but the damage was done. I watched it all unfold from my office, feeling strangely calm. This wasn't mere revenge, it was justice. Patient lives were at stake with this technology, and the truth needed to come out. My phone buzzed continuously with messages, from industry contacts, former classmates, even Jake, who sent a simple text. Is this real? Call me. I ignored them all, except for a message from Dr. Rodriguez. The board is impressed. They want to discuss potential equity investment in Prevent Care. That was the real victory. Not just a contract, but validation and the chance to scale our solution nationally without compromising our vision. The company I had built against all odds would not just survive, it would thrive. And tomorrow I would deal with my parents. I didn't have to wait until tomorrow. My parents arrived at my office unannounced that evening, their faces ashen. My father, always imposing in his tailored suits, looked diminished somehow. My mother's perfect composure had cracked, her hands nervously twisting her designer handbag. "What have you done?" my father demanded, his voice hoarse. I gestured to the chairs across from my desk. "Please sit down." "Our stocks are worthless," my mother blurted out. "Pharmatech is finished. Harold's Investment Group is facing inquiries from the SEC. We're ruined, Lana, completely ruined." I studied them both, searching for any sign of remorse or understanding. I found none, only fear and blame. "I didn't do anything except build a better product and tell the truth," I said calmly. "You chose to back a company that falsified data and put patients at risk." "We need your help," my father said, the words clearly painful for him. "The house, our investments, everything is tied to Pharmatech. We have nowhere else to turn." The irony wasn't lost on me. Just weeks ago, they had cut me from their will for being a failure. Now they were the ones asking for a bailout. "I understand you're in a difficult position," I said, echoing my mother's patronizing tone from countless conversations. "But I can't be your financial safety net." My father's face hardened. "After everything we've done for you." "That's just it," I interrupted. "What exactly have you done except undermine me at every turn? You taught me that people should succeed on their own merits. I'm going to respect that lesson." I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. I can refer you to a good financial advisor. Beyond that, I think it's best if we take some time apart. As they left my office, I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a quiet certainty that I had finally broken free from their shadow. The next morning, I gathered my team to share the news about National Health System's investment offer. As we celebrated this milestone, I looked around at these brilliant people who had believed in my vision when my own family hadn't. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, I told them, but today we've proven that doing the right thing, building something with integrity, eventually wins. Later, alone in my office, I removed the family photo from my desk drawer where I'd hidden it months ago. I studied the smiling faces, a facade that had masked years of conditional love and impossible standards. I placed the frame face down in the bottom drawer. Perhaps someday we would find our way back to each other, but it would have to be on new terms, with mutual respect and acceptance. For now, I had a company to build and patients whose lives we could improve. That was legacy enough.